Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the results of the past weekend with a preliminary focus on the USCX series. The third and fourth round took place in Rochester, New York, and with me here to do that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Before we get started, I would like to notify our listeners that we have recently launched a Substack called Inside Cyclocross. The link to that will be posted in the show notes. It's an extra platform we're offering with in-depth analysis of certain topics. It's written, so if you're interested, feel free to sign up for that. But now we'll go to the US, where the third and fourth round of the USCX series took place in Rochester. We can, again say there's no broadcast, but that's not really a surprise, so let's look at the top 10 of the first day. Andrew Strohmeyer took the win ahead of Scott Funston. Tobin Ortenblad was third. Then we saw Henry Koot in fourth ahead of Kerry Werner in fifth. Marcus Shelton was sixth ahead of the first Canadian Tyler Clark. Owen Brenneman was eighth ahead of Sam Brown, and Curtis White completed the top 10. Let's start here. 2 wins this weekend for Andrew Strohmeyer. He also took the win on Sunday, Issam. Not really a surprise. We already thought he would be the best American this season. We already discussed that last week. I think the question here now to discuss is, how do you think Andrew Strohmeyer will fare against Eric Brunner, who is starting his cyclocross season later? Do you think Strohmeyer can compete, or will Brunner, the reigning American and Pan American champion, still be a bit too good?
That's going to be the question, of course. I mean, if you look at the progression that has been made by Strohmeyer, I definitely think that he has become a little bit better. It will depend on certain circumstances of the race itself, and also kind of the amount of races that Strohmeyer is doing at the moment. You know, how will he get out of this USCX series? How will he be able to get through that and then focus on what is coming next? And it looks like Strohmeyer definitely made a step forward. The question is going to be if that step is going to be enough, and it will also depend in a way on the course itself and what type of course they are going to get in terms of circumstances, because that too could play a role in how the race will play out.
Personally, I think that Strohmeyer will be on par with Brunner. He'll probably even beat Brunner at some point this season, and I just go off by the limited data we have. Last year, Strohmeyer and Brunner raced each other 2 times from the top of my head, or at least 2 times. Yeah, it should be 2 times, in Waterloo and in the American Championships, and Strohmeyer had the upper hand in Waterloo, but at the American Championships, Brunner won by 10 seconds. Doesn't really tell the full story. Brunner crashed in that race and had a mechanical, came back and won, so he was significantly stronger than Strohmeyer. But I think Strohmeyer has made another step, which you would hope for somebody his age. Brunner, I don't really know exactly what he's up to. I just have more of a feeling around Strohmeyer. He's fully committed to cyclocross, and therefore I believe he should be able to beat Brunner this season. And if that's for the Pan American or the American title or just in other races, that doesn't really matter. I don't think Strohmeyer will walk away with it, but they should be closely matched, so that's something exciting to look forward to. Then, Issam, we're early in the season. We see quite a bit of inconsistency. Scott Funston from Cervelo Orange Living, 2nd on the first day, 7th on the second day. Last weekend he was 3rd and 4th. On his Instagram after the race, he wrote 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Found a great headspace and rode aggressively to finish 2nd on Saturday. Sunday I was afraid of the heat and didn't make the moves necessary to be at the front. I botched the last lap and gave away points. Onwards to Charm City. Early season, September, heat, different sport than in November and December, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think that's the double headers are always a bit difficult, and especially early on when you do the first couple of double headers, it's your body's almost in a state of shock, and you just gotta push a little bit through that. And then you can see even with the riders with a little bit more experience that they too struggle maybe a little bit with the double headers, and then later on in the season when it becomes almost kind of normality to have double headers, they kind of get used to that, and then the consistency gets back in the game. And I feel that, as you said, it's so early in the season, and especially right now, it's just a given that certain riders will definitely have some issues with the double headers, and you shouldn't be reading too much into that. It's as he said himself, you go one step forward, two steps back, and you kind of just you roll with it. The most important thing as a rider is that you stay calm, that you understand that you take the positives of the first race, and kind of just move from there. Because if you lean too much in the negativity and you feel that you had sort of a setback and you don't really know why, and you're trying to find an explanation, you're just spending too much energy. Just focus on what's coming next, and the consistency will come when you go further and further into the season. So that is probably something that we will see the more we get into this season, for sure.
The heat is one factor, but the courses are also another factor here. Funson is a rider that wants to make a name for himself in Europe and wants to do well in those races, and they're just on a completely different type of course. And as a European, the talk around the Rochester race is always just very funny to follow. And I say this with the most respect for the race organizers. I respect every race organizer no matter where they are, but as a European, like the stuff about double trouble being a big feature or the big wall, it's just funny that that's so big of a deal when they would be fairly mild features on European courses. And I get that it's because of the perspective, and races like Rochester provide a different angle than most American races, but to me, as a European, where we have super challenging courses almost every week, with, of course, the most spectacular ones being Namur and Hulst and Zonhoven, then this course here about Rochester is just funny to follow, because again, it would just be maybe at most an exact cross level race here. And if you then see that they build a cobbled section which looks more like a rock garden, which is downhill in the first lap, and then or in the first day, and then in the second day it's uphill, it just adds to a bit of the silliness from European perspective on those features. And again, I get it's a great opportunity for Americans to take a course that's a bit different, but it's funny to follow. Something that was also noticeable here was Tobin Orteblad. He took 2 third places. He was consistent over the weekend. That was, to me, quite surprising. I must admit, I don't know all too much about Tobin Orteblad. I checked his results. I checked some interviews. He's been focusing on gravel. I knew he'd raced before, and I'd heard from stories that he was quite talented as a U23. I didn't really expect this. But something that we can tell a bit more about is Henry Coote, first year U23, racing for Comp Edge, 4th place on the first day. Very impressive result, isn't it, Issam?
Yeah, absolutely. Was not really able to set that through on the second day, but as we said already early on in the season, consistency is not always something that you will find. But that first day is very telling of the potential that he has and the step that he potentially could be making this season. I think that it is for him a very positive sign. He should cherish that, and he should build on that and try to get more of those moments. And I think for him, age that he has at the moment, this is just it's a very, very, very strong result. And of course, it's on a course probably with the surface that is a bit faster, that it would lean more towards those youngsters, so they have sort of a benefit in these type of races. But again, it's you still have to be able to pull it off, and he did just that, and I think it's a very, very solid result from his side.
I wouldn't necessarily say that Henry Coote is a rider that does particularly well on fast courses. I mean, he does do well on fast courses, but he also does well on courses that are not so fast. He's done it in muddy conditions. In Baal, he finished 2nd last year as a junior. In Hulst, which was a bit slippery, he finished 6th. He was 10th in the World Cup of Antwerp. He can do it on almost every type of course, which is promising. As you say, he's young, he's talented. I think we can't really underestimate enough that he needed to start quite far towards the back, and that's also playing a factor on the day 2 performance, because if you're starting at the back, A lot is luck dependent. You can't be caught behind any start crash. You can't be caught behind any of somebody missing their pedal or somebody screwing up somewhere. Everything plays in. You're dependent on the pace at the front of the race. That all plays together in such a result coming at the end of the race. It's very talented. Koot will potentially be one of the riders fighting for the U23 title later this year. Early to say, there's many other contenders. Dylan Zakrasek has been good. Marcus Shelton, we'll talk about him later. Also very good performances. So let's not get ahead of ourselves there, but he also finished 9th at the Mountain Bike Junior World Championships, Henry. He's a very talented kid, and this is a good start for him to the elite race, and the 30 points he scored here will significantly help him. He races for Competitive Edge Issam. Last year we had some questions about what was this team really doing, what were their signings. There were other riders on the market there that would have potentially been better signings. Koot was coming from their development program. That clearly worked out well. We didn't really doubt that, but what do you think about the rest? They made some other signings. To me, I'm quite positive about those signings. They signed Lauren Zerner, they signed Eric Brunner last minute, which was kind of a lucky signing in my opinion, but Zerner and Zakrasek especially, two quite good signings.
Yeah, and I think that is also very good for American cyclocross as a whole. I think that, you need those big kind of teams that are able to bring in a lot of riders, and you don't only need to have the best, but you can also work with the ones that are just below that. And I feel that they really did a good job in their signings. It's gonna be interesting how that will continue going forward. Obviously, with the interest certain riders have to other disciplines, and at the end of it, it's just we gotta hope that they, in terms of the money, finances, and the support, and that is all set, that they are able to have something that will be sustainable for years to come. And I think when that is the case, obviously, if in 2-3 years we're still able to talk about the team, I think that is probably, in my eyes, that would be a very successful story. And also in terms of the team, if they are still able to sign those riders, if they're still able to keep the riders that are good and support them in such a way that they are not lacking anything, I think that's going to be an important thing. But as you said, last year it was a bit of a question mark on what their goals were and what they wanted to do with the team. But it looks right now that they have a solid base, and you have to work on that and try to make the riders that are there grow, but also grow as a team. And I think they have the riders, and they have the potential to do so. So we have to wait and see how that will all play out this season, and especially the seasons to come.
Well, I do think that with their signings, they tried to sign some of the best available, and also just in general some of the best American riders for the future. Lauren Zerner is the U23 Pan American champion. Dylan Zakrasek finished second at US Nationals U23 last year. With that, they're trying to pick up some good riders, and of course Brunner, which falls in a different category, is the best American rider at the moment. But even without Brunner, I was already quite positive of their transfer window. But back to Henry Koot, I think his performance fits in a general trend. The first year U23s are just very good. Miles Mattern on CXD Trek bikes was moving forward through the field nicely as well, fighting for, I think, the 4th position as well, but it could have been a little bit lower. But he had some issue in the penultimate lap and needed to, I think he ran to the pits or something. His lap time was 2 minutes slower than the rest, and he finished 23rd in the end. But he was on for a good result. He was 3rd in Englewood as his first race as an elite. He could start a bit further to the... No, he couldn't start further to the front because the UCI ranking hasn't been released so far. Back to the point, Calvin Conaway, another first-year U23. He finished 14th on the first day. A bit further down, we saw other riders fighting for the top 10. Ryan Drummond was around there, James Halverson, Otis Engel. It's a positive sign to see those young riders trying to break into these results, and that's something US Cyclocross needs. They need new riders to challenge the older riders, fill the age gaps. So that's something that's quite positive. If we move on to the second day, we have a couple of different riders to talk about. Strohmeyer took the win again, ahead of Marcus Shelton. Tobin Orteblad was 3rd. Jules van Kempen 4th ahead of Kerry Werner. Tyler Clark was 6th. Scott Vonsen was 7th, as we discussed. Dylan Sakrastek was 8th. Curtis White 9th and Cody Scott 10th. Let's start here with second place finisher Marcus Shelton. Issam, you already mentioned something about consistency. We don't need to repeat that, but for him, another rider, and he had a DNF in the first day of Go-Cross, finished 3rd the day after, 6th in the first day in Rochester, 2nd after. Not really that consistent, but I don't think he can be disappointed. Third year U23, getting 2 podiums in the first 2 weekends of the USCX series. I think the rider of the Bear national team will be happy.
Well, he should be. If he's not, then I don't know what his expectations were, but you can be critical of yourself. I think he can be very pleased with this weekend, especially in terms of trajectory, being able to actually being better on the second day. Overall, I think that's a very, very solid result, and it shows that the form is definitely there, and he's able to get some good results in. And we have seen that Strohmeyer looks to be in a league of his own at the moment in the USCX series. So I think that you can almost say that second place was the highest achievable for Marcus, and I think he did just well. And that is how you have to look in those races. You have to set your goals, and if you are not able to achieve them, then obviously you shouldn't be too down about them. But I think that he can be very, very pleased with the results he has booked, and it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to continue that trend in the next coming round.
Shelton only came on my radar last year. His first junior year was wiped out by COVID. As a second year junior, he got, I think we can say he got outclassed by many first years. Frank O'Reilly, AJ August, Ben Stokes. They outclassed him. He wasn't really bad, but he also didn't really stand out, and then as a first year U23, it's up against the elites, so he obviously doesn't stand out that much. But last year, when he got those top 10s, he started standing out, and it looks like he's made quite another significant step. It just shows linear development doesn't exist, and that's nice to see. He's doing really well. He's still a U23, so I'm excited to see what he can do later this season, especially curious to see how he will do in the European races. He did a bunch of races last year, including the World Championships, ended 24th at the World Championships, which is not a special result, but definitely something he can build on, and it seemed like he did just that over the summer. Then, a final mention and final discussion point here, Issam. We again come to consistency. Again, don't need to repeat ourselves, but Jules van Kempen, very strong ride yesterday, 4th place. He's a rider who struggles with the heat, and it is quite hot in the early season, but it's a very good result for the first-year elite.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks to be already going a little bit better. We have to take out the results, obviously, of the Saturday's race in Rochester, but I think that if you look at the first week and you see now how he made that step, I think that he can be very pleased. And, as you said, consistency, we have repeated that already many times, probably the word of the podcast, consistency, but it's, we have to say that because it's so early on, so you cannot really put too much emphasis on the results. And I think that for him, he has been, as you said, someone that could struggle a little bit with the heat, but he managed well, and I think that 4th is a result that he can be pleased with. And again, for him, same thing. Just how is he going to be able to cope with the circumstances next week, or at least the next round, which is next week or not?
Yeah, it's all back to back.
Yeah.
I think he's doing fine, and again, September form means nothing for the rest of the season. You can grow in the season, you can burn out throughout the season. Different weather conditions, different temperatures, different courses. So before I start filling up time by talking about more kits and stuff like last week, let's go to the women's race. Helene Clauzel took the win on the Saturday ahead of Magali Rochette, Sydney McGill and Manon Bakker. 5th place was for Caroline Mani. Katie Klaus was 6th ahead of Lauren Zerner. Raylin Nuss was 8th. Mia Asseltine 9th. And Anna McGill was 10th. Let's start here with the season start of Magali Rochette. Issam, last week I reported on the podcast that she was sick and therefore not informed the week before. Wasn't sure she would start here. She did start here, which is why I was quite surprised actually that she was so good on the first day. She almost won. Clauzel outsprinted her for the win. Then it seemed in the second day that Rochette, despite having a good base form, still wasn't all the way at her best because she bonged hard in the final 2 laps of the race and finished 6th. But overall, considering the circumstances, I would say encouraging season start for the Canadian.
Absolutely. I think that it is definitely something that you can build on, and considering the circumstances, definitely not bad. It's very early, but I feel that the level that she has shown on the first day, being around the same level as Clauzel and fighting with her for victory, is an encouraging sign. I think that is definitely a level that she is able to reach and beat. So I think that is a positive. For her, it's now also just making sure that she can build up towards those World Cups and European circuits, because I think that for her that should also be an ambition, and that is most likely her ambition as well, to be good there. And that's going to be interesting to see how she will be able to perform on the European circuits. I think that this year, despite the illness, I think the preparation has been good. So we will see how that will have an effect on the European circuit and how she will be able to play it out there.
I think it's not really a surprise, especially if you heard last week's podcast, that Clauzel took the win on both days. Also, Manon Bakker not exactly being on the top step of the podium is not really a surprise either. She always struggles at the start of the season. She doesn't like the heat. She doesn't like fast courses. So I think if we look at the results of the second day, we see some people to talk about. Second day's results were Helene Clauzel with the win ahead of Sydney McGill, Manon Bakker and Caroline Mani in 4th. Katie Klaus was 5th ahead of Magali Rochette. Lauren Zerner was 7th ahead of Raylin Nuss in 8th. Kaya Musgrave was 9th and Mia Asseltine was 10th. So whilst acknowledging that Sydney McGill has made another step and is significantly improving again, I would like to talk about Lauren Zerner, because last week I kind of already said it. She'll be better the more races she gets under her belt. Not really to pat myself on the back here, but consistent race weekend, solid race weekend. I think this is exactly what she should be looking for at this point in the season. She's a final year U23. Her goals will be the U23 Pan American title defense, winning the U23 national title, and then on to European races. So I think she can be happy with these results. It's another step up from last week, especially if you look at the gap to the people behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is it's an encouraging sign, and as you said it already quite well. She is someone that grows kind of into the season, and I think that the signs are there. And especially with the field that we have in the USCX series on the women's side, it's quite consistent. So you kind of know where you are. It's a very honest racing in a way. So I think for her, it's now looking forward in the results sheets and just try to set goals. I think that a top 5 could be on the cards here, and I think that if she's able to reach that is definitely an achievement. To be honest, an achievement to be proud of, and I think that would be a very encouraging sign. And we have to see how that will play out. But I think that there are good signs that the season is starting well, and that there is some potential in it in terms of where she can end up this season. So it looks the signs are there, and it looks quite good.
Finally, I would like to make a point about Mia Asseltine. She's caught my attention as well with a couple of decent results. 11th, 7th, 9th and 10th are her results in the USCX series. Last season she was in the top 10 of Charm City Day 2, but apart from that, she didn't really stand out that much to me. I did see her in the top 10 of Really Rad, but that was a slightly weaker race, so it looks to me like she's also made a step, although on the women's side there are, I think, still a number of riders that are waiting to start their season, more so than on the men's side, so that's something to consider, but I still thought it was worth mentioning. I think we've covered the USCX series quite well there. Then we can go on to the Hope Supercross series from the US to the UK is what I wanted to say. They had a midweek race in Bradford, Wyke, for the third round. Thomas Mean won the men's race ahead of Jorben Laurijsen and Alfie Amy. The women's elite race was won by Laura Verdonschot ahead of Anna Kay and Femke Gort. The final round of that series took place this weekend in Hunsworth. The women's race was won by Laura Verdonschot ahead of Anna Kay and Lotte Pale. Verdonschot making it 4 out of 4, winning the overall. Then on the men's side, Jorben Laurijsen won ahead of Jensen Young and Bram Sprangers. Thomas Meen had a crash when he was in the lead. He couldn't finish the race, and therefore he lost the overall series win to Jorben Laurijsen from Paul Sauze-Pingel. I have a few riders I would like to discuss here, Issam. Let's start. Anna Kay. I think Verdonschot winning here quite comfortably should not be a surprise. Looks like she has a good season start. Last year she was probably over the entire season the best Belgian woman. I'm still not over how she lost the Belgian championships there. She should have always won that. That was a criminal bottle by her. But she was good over the season, standing out especially in the sand races, 4th in Kokzijde, on the podium after the World Championships. Things are finally going her way. Kay, on the other hand, she got, I can't really say dumped. Her contract with the Cyclocross Reds didn't get extended. She had a bit of a slow start to these Supercross series with a 13th and a 5th, but then 2 seconds. It's also what you would expect from Kay, but it's for Kay. Personally, I don't think it's looking that good.
I wouldn't go too that conclusive on Kay. I would say that she's now in a new environment, and it's going to take time, obviously, to reach some sort of performance that we thought was possible from within her, and that could take a year, that could take 2 years. That's a process that's going to take a while. It's not going to appear all of a sudden. The form and the pace and having the good feeling and the good mood. It's a couple of factors, obviously, that play a role in a good performance. Obviously, one of them, and the most important, most likely, is having good legs and a good preparation. But I wouldn't count her out completely. But obviously, it's going to be very hard to be able to reach a regular top 10 level for World Cups or something similar. I think that will be quite a task for her. But I would say that if she's now in a new environment, new team, that could play a role in improvement, and hopefully it will in the races to come, and probably in the seasons that are coming, because it's gonna take a while, most likely.
I was talking more on the long term, that it doesn't look good. For many, like pre-COVID, she was quite talented, and then in COVID, she had a couple of seasons ruined by collarbone fracture. But I just never really saw the same Kay, or maybe it was just because the level of the women's field is being raised so much that so many new riders overtook Kay in that pecking order that it just doesn't look like the same Kay. And I think that will be hard to turn around, seeing how much talent is coming in and how her development trajectory isn't really taking any different exit. So, yeah, I think it will be hard for her to turn it around. I can't really see it happen. The men's classification was won by Jorben Laurijsen. Laurijsen is on Paul Sauze-Pingel. I think this will be his last season on that team. Laurijsen was quite talented as a junior, and then had his first 2 U23 years compromised by COVID. But after that, it wasn't really special enough to earn a spot on one of the best cyclocross teams in the world. 5th in the Dublin World Cup was good, but you should consider that he's competing against riders that are significantly younger as a final year, and then to finish 12th at the World Championships. No, he didn't race the World Championships. 12th in the final World Cup in Hoogheide, not selected for the World Championships. I don't think that's enough to warrant a place on Paul Sauze. I would want to make one comment about Alfie Amy. Very good ride, first year U23, finishing on the podium of 1 round, 2 fourths and a 5th is a very promising start for the young Brit. The Swiss cyclocross season started in Ilnau. Kevin Kuhn took the win ahead of Loris Rouillet and Joëlle Bertolini. The women's elite race was won by Lea Stern ahead of Lara Kraalman and Maite Bartels. Then there was some racing in Germany, Issam. Bad Salzdetfurth. Not really that surprising. but let's still go over the results. The women's race on Saturday was won by Aniek van Alphen. She decided to go through the German border security checks to make it there. Julie Brouwers finished second and Kiona Krabbe ended third. I don't really think that can be surprising. We would be shocked if Van Alphen didn't win that, especially after her ride on the Kleberg last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the field that is not really a surprise, and for her it's now just banking in those points and gaining that confidence, I would say, because that is probably the most positive thing that she did in those races, and getting the feeling as well, because the first races of the season, the mistakes are you tend to make a little bit more mistakes, and I think for her, these type of races where she was able to probably comfortably lead at the front, that just made it a little bit easier for her to work on that feeling, and I think that probably was a job well done, and we'll see how the next couple of races will play out for her, because I think, as you said, with the Kleberg Cross was already a good outing, and now again it looks quite good, so it's going to be interesting to see how that will play out in the next races.
I think the points game is something we can't underestimate here for the Dutch woman. Super competitive battle for those World Cup places. The top 8 Dutch riders get invited automatically to the World Cups. Currently, Aniek van Alphen is the 9th Dutch woman on the ranking. She is 90 points behind Leonie Bentveld. She is 140 points ahead of Betsema. It's quite close there, and if you're not in the top 8, you can still race World Cups, but you'll need to be appointed, and with a rider like Shirin van Anrooy, only 50th on the ranking, being appointed is not an easy task, so the battle there for those placings in the World Cup is fierce, and might only become fiercer if a rider like Marianne Vos decides to do cross, so it's important for Van Alphen to get those points, and she also took the win on the second day. That time, Barbora Jerabkova was second and Julie Brouwers was third. I thought it was nice to see the Czech woman finishing second. The men's race then, that's the final part. The first day it was won by Federico Seolin ahead of Hannes Degenkolb and Wout Jansen. The second day it was Marek Konwa who took the win ahead of Federico Seolin with Denny van Lierop in third. Think that's it, Issam, unless you still have something you would like to discuss.
No, I just one small remark. Just, make sure Mette Penninga doesn't hear that Bad is the best team in the world.
Oh, I said one of the best. One of the best.
Or one of the best, but even that would be too much credit. I think, they have a very solid team, but if Mette Penninga hears you, that, we're not gonna, he's gonna say that over and over again, so please be careful with your words.
Oh, it's still a few weeks until the Belgian cyclocross season starts. I can pat them on the back now before in 2 weeks' time we'll be here, and then we'll be discussing the opening of the Belgian weekend, the Belgian season with Beringen. Slightly revisited course there. They're preparing for the Belgian Championships. I don't see what can go wrong if you organize the Belgian Championships on a former mine in January when it's raining and snowing and whatnot. I only vaguely remember a race like BLS, but that will be another discussion for about a year and a half from now. But I'm really looking forward to that one. Beringen, it's so good to see the Belgian cyclocross season come back. Thibaut Nys gonna do a full season. Let's see if he can do it. I'm excited. I'm getting excited, Issam.
Cyclocross back on the TV. I mean, that's quite something. I'm looking forward to that too. And what could go wrong with Beringen in January, as you say, that's something for later to discuss. But yeah, it's coming, and we are waiting for it.
We will be back next week. Then we'll discuss the third weekend, and that's rounds 5 and 6 of the USCX series taking place in Charm City in Baltimore. Really looking forward to that one. It's one of my favorite American races. Shame I can't watch it, but I think that's also more of a European-style course than Rochester. That would deserve the hype for me. Well, anyway, thanks everyone for listening, and yeah, as said, we have Inside Cyclocross. The link to that is in the description. Issam, thank you for being here, and we will catch all of you next week. Goodbye.